been together so long we can't pretend. Remember the way we used to move, dance all night like young lovers do. Your heart is changing. Now we don't dance like we used to. Silent disco on the floor, baby. Mr. DJ, he'll get me through. When the beat's gone, you can't save me, baby.
This is Broad Radio. For you, by you. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Hello and welcome to Broad Radio. I'm Jo Stanley and my co-host today is Nellie Thomas. Good morning, Nellie.
Oh, good morning, beautiful Jo. Look at that little face.
Oh, darling, it's delightful to see you. And you're straight from the laundry. I'm impressed. You've put a load on.
I have put a load. When am I not putting a load on? There's 3 people in my house. There's me and 2 children. We're in lockdown. We can't go anywhere. Still 13 towels, mate. 13 towels.
I know, it's endless. And the folding. I mean, the piles of folded laundry in the house, and I'm lucky I've got a husband who helps as well. The 2 of us, we fold endlessly, put it away. Somehow it gets worn again. Why? Stop wearing clothes.
You don't iron, do you?
No, God, no.
No, like I hear people ironing and I'm like, you're ironing?
Yeah.
What? Who has time to iron? I get like the undies of the little one and just like chuck them in her room because I know they'll be back in the basket in about 5 seconds. The costume changes of this child. Seriously, I've given up.
Yeah.
I've given up.
Yeah. Anyway, it's lovely to have you in between loads of washing.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Listen, we've got an awesome show ahead for you. We are going to be joined by Australia's most successful female paralympian, Ellie Cole, in just a moment.
Amazing.
She's straight from a COVID test. I mean, it's that kind of morning.
Yeah. Weeping, her nose is running. Don't cough, Ellie. Do not cough. They won't let you out.
That's true. We also are going to learn how we can care for our kids during the pandemic when Tracy Adams, CEO of Kids Helpline, joins us. And we're going to be talking about what work, love and health looks like for women post-COVID with Helen McCabe from Women's Network Future Women. That's all coming up after this. Broad Radio is proudly supported by Chemist Warehouse. Chemist Warehouse, great savings every day. So a little bit of housekeeping at the top. We love it when you comment. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube Live, do share your thoughts along the way. It's really important to us that we hear what you have to say. This is all about you, essentially, so we really want to know your thoughts on the conversation. If you'd like to catch up on any of our past episodes, you can do that via podcast, Broad Radio on the Go, available wherever you get your podcasts. And we also invite you to tell us what you think with our 1-question survey that we run every week. And at the moment, actually, here's our question for this week. It's a pretty pertinent one. What do you do? What's something enjoyable you do to get you by? We've got reading books. You've got using your hands like crochet. Hells no. What about talking to your friends, cooking? I'm disappointed. Ro, who's our lovely producer over there, she wrote this one this week and she hasn't written in there crying in the corner. Should I?
I was going to say.
Ro, why didn't you put crying in the corner?
Weeping in horror at life, gestures everywhere.
I mean, weeping helps, don't you think, Nellie?
Ro, you're a bit up yourself with that list. I've got to, where is the bumming a smoke off the postie? Where is the drinking at noon?
Yeah, drowning in a bottle of gin.
Yes, bottle of gin, there's that. Or hiding in the car. I find myself, I'll just go and sit in the car away from the world.
I actually got excited the other day about taking the kids to Red Rooster. right? Red Rooster Bell Street. I'm like, I'll get to talk to someone when I'm ordering. Maybe when I get to the counter, they'll have the order wrong. We'll have another conversation. We're out of the house. Like, this shit is real.
Yeah, you've got to find the joy. This was my meditation this morning, actually, Nellie. I wrote it down because I do meditate every day. And this was a wise person in my meditation said, we have the power to create moments of joy and peace within ourselves, right? It's a good thing to remind ourselves of.
Sure. I'm going to take issue with that in a moment, but continue.
All right. Well, okay, we'll go down that rabbit hole. But let me tell you, the thing that's been giving me joy over the last 24 hours is the photo of Megan Fox at the VMAs. Because I think to myself, you know what? She's just so unhappy. Look at what she's wearing. She's regretting that decision. She hasn't dried her hair. And every time I go, oh God, I'm so overwhelmed and exhausted by this life. I look at that and go, well, at least I'm not that right now.
You think I'm not in a major magazine in my undies? You know, like looking like I just sucked on a sour lemon. Like, I hope that that's her like photo face, because maybe that's a photo face that she thinks is hot and she's actually really happy. But yeah, girlfriend doesn't look like she's enjoying herself, does she?
No, she doesn't look. She doesn't look like she's a fun time at all. So, all right, you want to take issue with my meditation? We have the power to create moments of joy and peace within ourselves.
No, I think we can try and find joy, but I'm also, and I know you also subscribe to this, I'm just sick of being resilient. I'm sick of being freaking resilient. And if, you know, Marie Kondo was here asking me to bloody spark joy with my 13 towels, like I think I would just cry and cry and cry. Like there is a place at the moment, I think, for just going, no, I actually can't find it. It'll come back. Like I'll find some joy later in the afternoon or maybe tomorrow or maybe in a month or whatever it is. But I think there can be a certain psychological pressure in kind of, is everyone finding joy except me?
Yeah, I don't want to imply that I'm always, like I think that toxic positivity is a thing. Actually, Ro mentioned this morning we were talking about. I think that there's a culture out there that if you're not happy, positive all the time, then obviously there's something wrong with you, right? I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to that at all. What I do subscribe to is sitting with your feelings. You sit with your feelings, and if that means sitting and looking out a window. In fact, I did that for 12 months when I lost my last job. I just sat and looked out the window for 12 months because that's all I could do is sit with that feeling, right? So I really believe in that.
And you're good at sitting with feelings, and I know you wouldn't do this, but I'll do it. Like when we did our sound check this morning, I burst into tears, and Jo she just sits with feelings. Like you're good at that. I'm like a little raging toddler going, no. No, thank you. Like I'm a women's health ambassador and I rage against meditation. Meditation makes me angry.
Well, that's fair. but that's a feeling, and that's a totally valid feeling.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mum.
I'm sorry. What do you? If you were with me, I would give you a hug. Unfortunately, that's the other thing. This stupid virtual connection with people. It's bullshit. I'm sick of it. I don't want to do it anymore. I hate it.
I can't even. I'm going to tell you where I have what sparked joy for me this week, though.
Yes.
The Survivor finale, among other things.
Yes.
Oh, because I'm
too.
broad radio fans, and I'm a massive Survivor fan. Seen every episode from every country, literally ever. And I think this was one of the best seasons of Survivor I've ever seen. And I could not have hoped for a more worthy final two. Mm-hmm. Like, I just loved it. That final challenge was some, like, waterboarding Guantanamo torture shit.
It felt very medieval, didn't it?
Woo! But geez, it was good.
Yes. So for people who wouldn't have watched Survivor, I did. Yeah. But the two worthy winners were actually just really clever at playing the Survivor game. So you kind of had to understand what the game is to really even follow what they were doing. But I loved that Haley won because she was so physically strong as well. And not sorry, say again. And
so bright. And I think one of the things that I loved about it, especially watching with the kids, is like this sort of idea, you know, in the schoolyard, the physically strong, the socially strong triumph. In Survivor, that's not always the case. I mean, Hayley was a good, well-rounded package who was the ultimate winner. But George, the other person, didn't have great social skills, was certainly not physically strong, but was very bright. And for anyone who struggled at school, I feel like there's an element of he beat those big boys and girls, beat them fair and square, and a little bit of a, you know what I mean?
I'm sure there was plenty of that
Mate,
revenge.
I was into it.
It was super, super awesome. And something, we're all just looking for release at the moment, aren't we?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting lots of people on Facebook actually agreeing with you in many ways today, Nellie. Firstly, Vala says meditation makes her angry as well.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. I feel terrible saying it, but it's true.
That's okay. And Anita is saying she just found her KonMari list and thought she might give it a go. God bless you, Anita, if you're going to go there today.
Why not? You know what? It does give you, I think doing a clear out, like if you clear out your linen cupboard or something, gives you an ultimately false but satisfying sense of control.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
God.
Go for it. Clean your junk drawer.
How long does it stay looking nice, though, your linen cupboard?
Oh, half an hour.
That's it.
What else have you got to do, Joe? You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You can't see anyone.
It's true. You've very quickly though, you've gone from Survivor onto SAS. Yeah. Okay. Now I do want to get to our guest soonish, but do tell us about SAS because it's been everywhere. This new reality TV show, well, the latest season, I should say.
Yeah, look at them in their camo. So basically they get a mix of people, sports people, sort of minor celebs, occasionally major celebs, and they apparently put them through a special forces like real course. I'm mixed because I actually really enjoy it, but probably for all the reasons that I shouldn't. Like it's kind of satisfying to see someone you don't like yelled at. And then on the other side, there's part of me kind of going, oh, this is bullying. I shouldn't be watching this. This is humiliating. And I'm particularly concerned that they have Sam Burgess on, a very controversial inclusion, as of course often happens in reality TV. But this is a guy who has got multiple allegations of family violence, sexual harassment, a range of things. I think he's an NRL player. They sort of talked to him about it last night, but they did a bit of your career finished and then you spiraled and you started taking coke and you drank too much. And again, as a family violence prevention ambassador, I'm sitting there going, women take cocaine, women drunk drive, women drink too much, women lose their careers. They don't end up generally with AVOs against them, right? This is not the discussion. Like you're not going to reform him. A couple of soldiers are not going to reform this dude. So I'm very concerned about that inclusion. But if I can put that to the side, I will still watch.
Oh, you'll definitely watch. I mean, you've almost made me watch just because you told me that someone was in their undies, in their G-string running. Who was that?
Oh, bless her. So Yana Pittman is one of the other potentially controversial inclusions. I'm guessing she didn't know that they were going to be asked to strip down. I mean, they weren't, I don't think they were asked to strip down for no reason. Like it was to get change, but they did have to run some like 100 metres. And then you just see this little bottom wobbling around going, Yana, you wore a G-string to an SAS training camp.
Oh, poor Yana. Oh, that is a shame. Anyway, look, you can tune in to that sort of TV, and at the moment it's kind of what we're turning to because the Paralympics ended. I mean, the Olympics and the Paralympics were the things that were keeping us going over the last recent lockdown, and we got the benefit of seeing real athletes doing incredible things. And
more wholesome. Yeah.
Oh, more wholesome, not a G-string that inside. Not what we saw. Anyway.
I didn't mean the G. I meant the yelling.
Oh, the yelling. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, wasn't that amazing though? You're right, actually, Nellie, that the energy and the love amongst all of the people, both the Paralympics and the Olympics, it was the most supportive TV you've ever seen in your life. So let's actually talk to someone who's actually achieved physical feats of greatness. She's our most decorated female Paralympian, Ellie Cole. Good morning.
Yay!
Hey, girls, how's it going? This is very entertaining to listen to.
I'm glad. Well, you need something. You're
I'm just so sorry.
Well, you're in quarantine, so you probably your standards are fairly low.
My standards are low. I actually put clothes on this morning, so that was a good start to the day. But I'm actually enjoying just a bit of quiet time. We've been training for the Paralympics for 5 years, and I've been waking up at 4 o'clock every morning, which you two are probably used to, for 5 years. So it's nice to be able to sleep in until 8:30 or 9 o'clock and just roll out of bed when I feel like it. I'm pretty much on holiday here.
Amazing. I'm so sorry that I have led an introduction to a world famous Olympian by talking about some dickhead on SAS. Like, I could not apologise more profusely. You did spark joy. Oh, how much joy did you spark? Do you realise, girl, how much joy you brought us all?
I do have a small sense of understanding because I was in a similar predicament to most of the country when the Olympics were on. I was still in Australia, watching a lot of my friends over in Tokyo at the Olympics, training for the Paralympics still. And you're right, having the games on our television sets during a pandemic it did spark a lot of joy. But when you know a lot of the Olympic athletes on a more personal level, it was a pretty emotional 2 weeks for me. So I kind of had to pull myself together and get myself ready to go over there myself for the Paralympics. But I've heard, I could hear all the way from Tokyo about how well the Paralympics were being received by Australia. And I'm just really happy that people are finally beginning to understand, the message that the Paralympics can send and why I love the Paralympics so much.
What is that message in your words that the Paralympics can
Well,
send?
a lot of people see the Olympics as the greatest athletes in the world, and the Paralympics is very similar. We have athletes that are training for their entire lives to represent Australia. But the one thing that I really do love about the Paralympics is the backstory behind a lot of the athletes. Anytime I'm doing any kind of media, they're more interested in the life lessons that I've learned whilst having a disability. And then the sport bit kind of comes on the end there. And I've always wanted people to see Olympic athletes as people too. So I think, the Paralympic movement is also slowly starting to change how people perceive our Olympic athletes. And I found in Tokyo that our public had a lot more grace than usual when it came to our Olympic performances. It's usually, if you don't win gold, you get death threats, countless death threats. But people are finally starting to see the athletes as people as well, and really great ambassadors for Australia. And it's just incredible. The athletes that I had the honor of spending my time with in Tokyo were incredible people, and by large quantities. There were 179 of us. It's honestly the most incredible experience, being surrounded by so many people that have had so many near-death experiences or been told time and time again that they won't live a fulfilled life, and they've overcome those challenges, and they've represented their country and just do what we love to do and find a passion and just run with it.
Ellie, can I ask you a slightly hairy question? I'm fascinated to see your response. There's no wrong answer, as they say. But one of Stella Young, the dearly departed Stella Young, was one of my best friends. And when she went to cover the London Paralympics, her and I had a long discussion about whether or not the Olympics and Paralympics should be merged. And I'm interested to see whether you think it should be one big athletic event or whether it's better off having them separated and understood that they're different events.
Yeah, it's certainly something that a lot of the athletes, Olympic and Paralympic, have considered before. But, whenever the athletes are speaking about this around, the dinner table, the conversation always goes to that the Paralympic swimming event anyway is 10 days and the Olympic swimming events are 8 days, and nobody wants to sit through 18 days of racing. I prefer to keep the Olympics and the Paralympics separate. We do have opportunities at other times, such as the Commonwealth Games, to bring our teams together. But I just really enjoy like what the Paralympic movement represents, and I really enjoy what the Olympic movement represents. And I feel like they have, different things to offer. And like I said before, nobody wants to sit through 18 days of racing. It's already exhausting as it is.
I don't know.
I would sit through that. Yeah, I would definitely sit through that.
I mean,
But
I would love to see like an Olympics and Paralympics event where maybe there's a handicap. So say I start 3 or 4 seconds behind Kate Campbell and she has to try and mow me down.
Exactly. This is what, and can I ask, sorry, Joe, but I'm just getting worked up. Can I ask you one more question, Ellie? And it's a difficult one as well. And full disclosure, I have an autistic child. So I have a child with an invisible disability. And watching the Paralympics, we were having discussions about, will autistic people be included, or people with invisible disabilities that aren't, or non-physical disabilities? Like, do you have a thought on that? Do you sit around the dinner table discussing that with your colleagues?
Yeah, there are a lot of disabilities that are invisible that are in the Paralympics. For example, in my classification that I race in, we have plenty of people who are suffering from multiple sclerosis, and from one day to the next, their condition might deteriorate or improve. So it can be quite difficult. In terms of autism, I'm not too sure where that could go and how it would get categorized, but I am open to anybody who has any invisible difference or struggles in any way. Only in the last, I think, 5 or 6 years have we had an intellectual impairment category. So people who have an IQ, I believe, lower than 60 are able to compete at the Paralympics now, just because of the challenges that they face in their day-to-day training environment. Somebody with an intellectual disability, for example, might really struggle at training to understand stroke rate or know how to pace. And when you watch a 200-meter freestyle of athletes with an intellectual impairment, instead of pacing the 200 meters, like start off slower and build over the 200, they'll just go as fast as they can from the beginning. And it's whoever can hold on for dear life. It's quite remarkable. And, that's one of the greatest things about the Paralympics is just to see, how people maybe compete a bit differently than what would be considered. Yeah.
And that's feeling of inclusion, that's sort of part of the disability community, that, people with invisible disabilities are welcome in the community generally, and not just in the Paralympics. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating area.
I think one of the greatest things that the Paralympics has to offer, even just outside of sport, is that every 4 years it's the center of attention in terms of like global interest. And so if anything, it's a really great platform for people just to start having conversations about these things. And so, the effects are remarkable. Everybody has been speaking about disability for the last 3 weeks, and disability is never really at the forefront of conversations. And so for me, it's wonderful to see just the change that can happen just by having a conversation.
Well, I mean, we saw it when the Australian government announced that Paralympians were going to be rewarded the same monetary amount as the Olympians. And that was like a very simple ticker box that just highlighted the disparity between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. It just, even that one little thing got a conversation going that I think was really profound and really important about equality, right?
That's the thing. I always grew up being a Paralympian. I've been a Paralympian since I was 16 years old, and I'm nearly 30 now. And I always had this sense that our public never really cared about our Paralympic athletes, that were a little bit of a sideshow. But seeing the public outrage that brewed when people realized that we weren't being paid equally, it made me realize that it's not that people don't care, it's that people don't understand. Nobody knew about this pay discrepancy. And so therefore nobody was fighting for us because they just weren't aware.
Yeah,
I know. And I assumed as an athlete that everybody knew this information because I live in my little athlete bubble. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to have the Paralympics, broadcast on mainstream television, to be able to have this conversation about equality in terms of payment and all other areas, I just assumed that nobody ever really cared, but that's not the case at all. People, especially Australians, they love to step up for an underdog. And at the moment, people with disabilities in Australia, they just aren't being treated the way that they deserve. Life is already hard enough with a disability, let alone not being recognised by the government like we should be. And so to be able to have this conversation over the Paralympic Games, I think that's why I was so emotional when Scott Morrison stood up and said to our entire country that he sees us as equals, because for 30 years, I have never been told that by our government before. And it was one of the most historic days, I think, for athletes with a disability that we have had in this country so far.
Well, Ellie, shame on us that it took us that long and that we had to be dragged there kicking and screaming. But can I also say one thing I've noticed, a big shift this Paralympics compared to even the last one and the one before, and I mean no disrespect to this man because I think he's absolutely golden, but most people probably would have just gone, oh, I know Kurt Fearnley. You know what I mean? Or I know Dylan Alcott. They're probably the only Paralympians or athletes with a disability that I could name. I think now that's changed. I think a lot more people engaged with the Paralympics this time, and they know who Ellie Cole is, and they could name 2 or 3 at least other Paralympians. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, I do. And I think that people really embraced our Paralympic athletes for the first time. Like I said, not just for being great athletes, but for being wonderful people as well. And the reason why I'm smiling is because I was speaking to Channel 7 last week, and I said that one of my favourite moments from the Games had nothing to do with performance. It was just Todd Hodgetts ripping his T-shirt off and screaming down the camera, this is what it's all about.
Yes, that joy. Yes.
It really is. I feel like our Paralympic athletes, they haven't yet been so commercialized and aren't necessarily told exactly what to say, exactly what to do, exactly how to behave. They just embrace exactly who they are. And Australia were loving it. I was loving it.
Yeah. So,
and the comrade, sorry, Joe, you go.
Oh, I really, because we have other guests waiting. I'm so sorry, Ellie. I want to bring up We the 15, which is this incredible worldwide movement that really kind of was a part of the Paralympics, but is then going on to share the message that people with disabilities are 15% of the global population. Can you tell us about what that campaign aims to do and how we can all get involved?
Sure. So We the 15 is a very exciting campaign. I guess it's aiming to accelerate what the Paralympic movement has been working on for such a long time. So people need to understand that in our world at the moment, we have 1 billion people that live with a disability. So that's 1 billion people. Yet, like I mentioned before, these people aren't being treated the way they should be, aren't being recognized the way they should be. In fact, out of that 1 billion people, 85% of them live in poverty. So this is something that we really need to change. So We the 15 is a campaign. It will span for a decade, and it's bringing together the biggest coalition that we have ever seen before of international organizations. And they're from all different sectors of life. So you've got sports, you've got human rights, you've got policy, business, arts, entertainment. Everybody is working together to change these statistics around people with a disability. And so, as I mentioned before, this campaign is going to span for an entire decade, and its aim is to raise awareness of people with disabilities, not just in sport by the Paralympics, but in other areas. It's aiming to change attitudes that people have. There's still such a strong stigma around disability. So we're aiming to break down those systemic barriers that we've seen. And it's going to, by, I guess, creating those conversations, create a lot more opportunities for people that have a disability. So like I mentioned before, the Paralympics is such a great platform to create conversation. We the 15 aims to do that every single day of the year over the next 10 years. And as I mentioned before, bringing together so many international organizations. So it's basically just bringing that disability conversation to the forefront, as I mentioned before. I'm very excited by this campaign.
It's amazing. It's amazing because, you shouldn't have to be an elite athlete to get a job. It's not everyone's going to be you. with a
I know,
disability.
I understand that. And
It's amazing.
in a way, I feel really great for being a Paralympian and inspiring so many Australians. But at the same time, I never want somebody with a disability to compare themselves to a Paralympian and say, I can't be successful unless I'm a Paralympic athlete. And so, you know, that's why We the 15 and all of these international organizations from all different walks of life are coming together, because we want to lift everybody that has a disability up, not just athletes. Yep. And so I'm really excited by the opportunities that this campaign is going to create, you know, reducing the number of people that live in poverty, increasing the amount of people with disabilities in the workforce and going to school and education and the employment market. Like it's going to be incredible. But we need as many people to get on board as we can. And you don't need to have a disability. You don't need to have a disability to help out.
I just
are you intimidated? I'm
don't even.
Medalist plus changing the world plus articulate plus I think I've had enough now.
Yeah, well,
you know what though? Even just giving me an opportunity to be able to speak about this, We the 15, you two are already changing the world.
Well, but see, Ellie, what I love about it is that it is a 10-year campaign, that it's that very simple hashtag We the 15, and I can see this taking off and becoming as on the tip of the tongue as the hashtag Me Too movement. That's the kind of change that needs to happen and that can happen from this very simple and very powerful campaign that we can all get on top of. It's a movement, right? It's a movement.
A global movement. Yeah. My kind of movement.
Yeah, I love it. Well, as you're an incredible athlete. I'm the sort of person that my kind of movement is going from the couch to the fridge. So this is the movement that I can get on top of. So please check out hashtag We the 15. There's some amazing resources there so that you can get involved. Ellie Cole, it's been just a great honour to have you on Broad Radio, because you're an absolute superstar. And all the best with whatever you go on to now, because I know that you are retiring from professional athlete, but I'm sure you'll do another
amazing
media
career. I don't know about you, Joe, but I'm saying media career. That's what I'm saying. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. Well, I better go and wash my own towels.
Yeah. All right, you get back to the laundry. We've got to get to our next guest. She'll be joining us after this. Oh my goodness, Nellie, it's felt like a bit of a runaway train today, I've got to say, this show, but so delightful. No, I love every
you just get so excited. Like, she's just amazing, isn't it? It's just so nice to be in the presence of amazing people.
It is. So let's welcome another amazing woman to talk about a book that it covers, I guess, the impact of COVID on women in very specific ways. And it's been brought out by the online publication and women's network Future Women. And the founder of Future Women joins us now, Helen McCabe. Hi there, Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Hi. Here it is. Yes.
Yes.
That is such a great interview. Can I just quickly say to you, that was such a great interview. I was glad to be able to sit backstage and just hear Ellie Cole. Yeah, amazing.
Isn't she extraordinary?
To watch a young woman like that, grasp all the opportunities in life that have been made available to her. Really impressive.
It's true. Hey, congratulations on this book. It's kind of like a snapshot of this time in history, I guess you'd say. And it tells the stories of so many different women. I mean, it's written by 3 brilliant women, but it also, it shares the stories of multiple different women's experiences. What's your intention for this book?
Well, our intention was to be hopeful, was to give women what life post the pandemic would look like. Now, you've got to remember, we wrote this last year. Say that very tentatively, because the concept of years and weeks and days is really starting to be very blurry. But we were writing it through the middle of the pandemic last year, and there was a tale of 2 cities, Melbourne and Sydney, and my co-editor in this, Jamila Rizvi, was in Melbourne and I was in Sydney, where, there were different rules, a different mindset, and of course not dealing with the 800 deaths that ultimately occurred in Victoria. So it captures that a little bit. You'll see that the women living in Melbourne versus the women living in Sydney had different experiences. Our idea was to give the good and the bad, what we learned from that experience and where we can take it. Because what we saw when COVID hit was it hit women harder and faster. So our primary concern was that all the gains of equality were going to be lost. We were the first to lose work. We were most likely to give up work under the pressure of obligations at home, and the most likely to pick up extra domestic care responsibilities. And then that feeds into a whole bunch of other challenges, mental health challenges, physical health challenges, and I guess the consideration of our families. And that's if we lived in a household where everyone sort of got along, let alone if you were in a relationship that was struggling or, dare I say, violent. So our aim was to kind of pick up the good from that and say, what can we as a society and as an individual take from this that'll be positive? And there are a whole bunch of things that occurred to us. But it's not lost on us that this book has come out when Sydney is now in its 12th week, struggling with the concept of opening up and what that means for our hospitals. And also Victoria is still, I mean, I don't know how the Victorian public is coping right now. It was so traumatic last time round, and to be in your 6th lockup, I really fear for my Melbourne colleagues and for friends and family down there.
We're not coping. I mean,
I wasn't sure. I suspected you were there, but I wasn't 100% sure you were both in Victoria. Are you? I'm sorry. You look like you're smiling, though.
Oh, well, you know what coping's like. You're coping and not coping at the same time. It's really interesting, reading, in terms of multiple themes. Can I just pick one thing up, which is, I guess for those of us, and I'm one of them, who identify as feminist and who believe, committed their life's work to gender equality, one of the things I find really interesting in my experience of the pandemic, because I've also been a carer and am a carer of kids with disabilities, and I know a lot of carers, a lot of the things that women are experiencing during COVID were already being experienced by a range of women who perhaps didn't have the voice within our movement or in the media or in the mainstream. When I hear of things being opened back up, for example, and we'll be going back to school and we'll be going to dinners, I hear the carers I know going, well, I won't be, and a range of other, I'm talking about intersectionality, which I'm sure you're well aware of. Do you have thoughts on that? Do you think we'll learn as a movement from this?
Yeah. I have about 15 thoughts all at once. So, and when my brain does that, it paralyzes, because I do think this has blown wide open many of the things that we inherently believe to be true. So I think there is a component about us as individuals that we're all just coping, right? So yes, we might live in nice apartments, and I might be in Potts Point, and I might not have 2 children at home, but everybody has their own individual challenges through this period. And so we do see it a little bit through our prism, and we do whatever we can to cope, to your point. And I certainly know from the women that we interviewed out of Melbourne, they all really didn't talk about it at the time. They really only opened up about the challenges post, being able to resume their lives. In terms of the issues of intersectionality, we do go into that to some extent. I completely am absorbed by the conversation before about disabilities, and I think the particular chapter that looks at some of that is the chapter on work by Jane Gilmore. Now, Jane is a writer and highly educated, and she found herself as a single mum on the verge of homelessness. Right. So we all know that story. That's a very quick slide that women at a certain age, and I'm going to say 50, can find themselves in. And she certainly explores the various components of poverty, including homelessness, whereby during the lockdown, Victoria swept all the homeless people off the street and stuck them in, gave them hotel rooms. And you had this moment in time where you didn't have any homelessness, right? So, and there was a moment in time where people who were traditionally worse off in the day-to-day life suddenly had never been better off. Now, what we raise as a possibility is there any of that we can take? And I'm just going to put on a slightly economic rationalist hat on and say, no government is ever going to take all of it. But are there bits of it that we can learn from? The other bit that I think was interesting in Love is by Santilla is single people. They were never noticed before. No one even thinks about them, right? They're like every federal budget that comes out, no tax breaks for single people. They're the ones that have to keep the tax rises go up, or they get a pay rise. You know, their income is subjected to additional taxes. So no one cares. But in this lockdown, in the first lockdown, eventually, and in this lockdown, people went, oh, hang on, there are all these people living on their own. And who's looking after them and who's caring? And then we developed the single bubble, right? But it took weeks and months for any politician to go, what are we doing about single women in their apartments, right? So it did expose a lot of those things, which the question we're saying is let's not forget. No. And if we keep going into lockdowns, I don't suppose we're going to be in a hurry. We're not going to be able to forget easily.
Yeah. I found there were so many things in the book, like it's very, very well researched, and there's so many facts and you know, statistics around where we are now and challenges for where we can go. And I really love that it's basically painting a picture of let's see what the world can look like, right? But I felt like it was singing to the choir when I'm reading it, right? Because I know that, I believe it, and I want all those changes. So who do you want to read this book? If you could wave a magic wand and put it in someone's hand, who would it be?
It's interesting you should say that. Look, you know, Jam and I have been working in Future Women together since 2018. I met her in about 2015 and knew that I would want to work with her straight away. And we literally debate this stuff every day. In fact, we have a midday session this afternoon where we're going to debate a whole bunch of issues. And we often, you know, quite often disagree, because I do have a strong view that we have to take people with us on this journey. We have to bring people. We can't keep bashing, I'm just going to use Scott Morrison as an example, over the head and telling him everything he does is terrible, because if we keep attacking, even when they're trying to do a Women's Economic Summit and trying to throw money at the problem of economic security, and, you know, they have committed a lot of resources and have put a lot of ministers in it, but it's very easy for us to criticise. So I guess what I want to do is provoke a debate, and this is what I'm going to speak for myself, not Jam. I want to provoke debate, and I want people to think about what could be done differently, and in terms of public policy, but we're also saying take individual responsibility. Think about how you spend your time. Think about your own consumption habits. Think about your own concept of success and materialistic, you know, endeavours that we've all been subjected to, and now we know we don't need any more jackets or shoes or handbags because we can get by, and we don't need a lot of the markers of success and power that we've come to, I guess, covet. So there's two things to it. One, we would like governments of any persuasion to think about what social policy priorities would make a real difference, but also for individuals to think about their role in that, and how to bring everybody on board to a shared outcome. I'm one that's concerned about the polarising debate and the constant knocking and the constant assumptions that if you come from one side of the debate, and I really don't care whether it's the left or the right, you're either good or bad, because you see that in all media, in both those sort of media ends of the spectrum these days, and try to have a balanced and grown-up debate. Does that answer your question, Jo? Because I've answered it from about three different perspectives.
No, it does, and I guess that there isn't really.
It's one of my favourite topics.
Like, there's no easy answer at all. But what I will say is read the book, because it's so well researched and it presents so many different ideas and experiences, and it really does, I guess, encapsulate how many different experiences women have had out there. And also do go to Future Women, because I love it, and it's a really unifying platform for women. And similarly to Broad Radio, it's all about the advancement of women and really fighting for gender equality and providing opportunities for women to reach their full potential, I would say.
And Jo and Helen, can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Because Jo mentioned the choir, which I'm really fascinated by, particularly given we just talked to Ellie. I think the choir needs some work. So I'm actually okay with preaching to the choir. I think we do need to speak to policymakers and people outside the broader gender equality movement, but our internal work isn't done either. And I guess that's what I was trying to say in terms of when we move forward, when we're talking about future women, when we do come out of this pandemic, I want the feminist movement more generally to be more cognizant of carers, of Indigenous women, of women with disabilities, of single women, of a whole range of women. And I think we have been guilty of having a kind of prototypical woman that doesn't represent enough people. So the choir needs some chatting too.
Yeah, look, that you make fascinating points, and we deliberately did that in the voices in this, which I'm sure you were cognizant of. And our aim is to be not tokenistic in this either. I mean, I'm just to go on a slight tangent. So often when we try to, we do it in a tokenistic way.
We do.
There's one, and that's something that we constantly battle as well at FW, to bring people along but not do it in a non-tokenistic way, and to be really mindful about how we represent the views of women and all views of women, because there isn't just one woman, as we know. But anyway, our work's never done. It's true. But we are, but we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah. Helen, so awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on Broad Radio, and thank you for the book. I really got a lot out of it. I think it's amazing. So you have a great day.
Love it.
See you.
Thanks.
And we'll have more Broad Radio after this.
In your arena, there's only one race to win, your own. You never stop, never quit, never look back. You push and test your limits until there are none left. Fuel your performance with INC Dynamic Way to keep you going.
Broad Radio, talking inspo we love, info we need, and sharing more of us. Watch and listen live every Tuesday 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at broadradio.com.au, or find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn at Broad Radio Oz. Talk to us live. Call on 1300 8 Broad. Catch up on demand anytime, anywhere, every time, everywhere. On the train, we'll be here. 2 a.m. existential crisis? We've got you covered. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Well, Nellie, we've covered off women and COVID, but as they say, you are only as happy as your unhappiest child. So we've felt for a long time that it's time we start talking about how if we have children in our lives, how we can help them be happier and healthier. And so to talk about that, we're really pleased to welcome to the show CEO of Your Town and Kids Helpline, Tracy Adams. Hi there, Tracy.
Good morning, and it's been great to listen so far. Fantastic interviews.
Oh, well, thank you, and thank you for your patience as well. I know you've been waiting in the wings there.
Sorry, I get carried away.
We do keep reading that kids are struggling a lot in this pandemic, and I am a mother of one. Nellie's a mother of two. I'm frustrated because I think all of us are feeling like our kids are starting to be left behind, and yet you're reading how much of a surge there is in the need for Kids Helpline. What are you hearing on your side of the fence?
Well, firstly, I think we need to be acknowledging and really recognising the great capacity our kids have had. This has been an enduring pandemic where I think children and young people have sacrificed a lot, and for many, they're going through that grief process. And for the month of August, for example, we had just over 43,000 direct contacts to Kids Helpline. And that really speaks to the fact that young people have listened to the message about help seeking and they are embracing it. But of course, the challenge is that we are seeing young people who are very distressed and very distressed by the environment around them. We know that not all homes are safe. They're very distressed by the loss, the social loss. And what really is of concern is they're reaching the point where they're not confident in a future. They don't actually see hope in the way that we're even talking about a future beyond the pandemic.
Mm. Oh, Tracy, you're speaking to me. Like, I think it's interesting, Joe and I were talking before, like my household is a safe household and there are loved children and it's a loving environment and we've got enough food and all those kinds of, basic fundamental things. We've got a yard, we've got dogs. Without betraying my kids' privacy too much, I will say one of them in particular has been fine up until this 6th lockdown. And it feels like, and I hear this a lot, it feels like it's broken her. It really feels like that sense of, as you said, the lack of hope in the future. This will never end. This is how life is going to be. I'll never get back to school, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to be honest, I've started to really struggle with that as a parent. Like, how much can you contain?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to think about mental health when we know that hope is something that is slipping away from people. And it doesn't matter whether you're a child and an adult. What sustains you is that hope, that factor of belief and that confidence in the future, and often what you're looking forward to, those things that we used to take for granted to a large extent. And I think young people want that assurance. They want to be told the truth, and we need to be honest. I do think we need to be really focused on having a much more rounded conversation. If we just look at each and every day, we're bombarded by how many COVID cases and how long the lockdown is. We're not talking about how many people are recovering, how much the vaccination is working, what's the roadmap, what's it going to look like. And I think importantly, we're not necessarily talking to children and young people. We're not thinking about them as an audience, and they are an audience and they need to have that level of assurance. And when parents and other people in our community, they're going through a lot as well, other people have to start supporting that and taking this all-in approach here if we're going to be able to come through this in a way where our young people are ready to step into the opportunities of openness is going to afford to us all.
So, Tracy, you talk about the conversations we have around our children, and I think about this all the time because my husband loves the news. He brings in headlines into the room, and I'm like, oh, she doesn't need to hear that. And also how much of what I'm going through am I being honest with her about? What's your advice? I mean, what should parents share and what should parents keep back? Is it appropriate for my daughter to know that I might have down days as well, or do you put on a brave face every day? I mean, how honest are we with our children?
Can I supplement that, Joe, by just saying, because I think this is exactly the point that a lot of parents are struggling with. You've really hit on it, Joe. Like I've had a couple of moments where I've cried in front of the kids and I don't want to cry in front of I want to be the container and the strong person and all that other stuff. On the other side, I go, should I be pretending to be okay?
Yeah.
Like tell us what to do.
Well, all I can say to you is what kids say to us, and that is, even if the parents aren't telling them, they're picking up on it. They know you. They're your kids. They know what their mum and dad is normally like, and even if you're not expressing it, the way that you are in your presence with them, they intrinsically will be able to pick up on things. And there's a degree of not talking about it that actually creates even more concern in children. And they'll ring and talk to our counsellors about the fact, I'm worried about mum and dad. I'm worried about raising this with mum and dad because I know mum and dad are dealing with a lot. Now, when we talk to parents, they tell us, we'd love our kids to feel confident, and I'd love the confidence to be able to have those conversations. And so I think at the moment we've got a bit of this duality where parents are trying to protect children and be brave, but children know their parents and they know that potentially that's all a little bit of a show at times, and the parents themselves are worried and struggling. So, I think having these conversations, being real, and if the children have got questions, then it's a great opportunity to just take pause and sit down and talk them through together, because there can actually be almost a bit of mutuality and feeling better by both people talking about it. And, and if a parent is worrying about their children because you're seeing changes in their behaviour, all the more important to have the conversation with them, because they may well be trying to protect a parent by not sharing with just what they are feeling because they know what's going on. But parents know their children, and if they see these behaviours and those behaviours are changing, the things they took joy from, or, just not sleeping well, not eating well, and not wanting to be engaged, they might all be signs that it's time to just absolutely be direct and ask them, where are you at? Because we are seeing increases of distress.
Tracy, why this sounds flippant, but it's a real question. Why do children want to have that conversation when I sit down at 9 o'clock for my half an hour of TV? Like, why, we try and have that conversation throughout the day and open feelings and blah, blah, and just sit down to go, okay, it's mum's time. I've got 45 minutes, and that's when it happens. Like, is that a thing?
Well, it can also be a nice tactic to almost not want to have really deep conversations, because they know that that might be a time that you want to be focused on something else. And, sometimes that can be a deliberate strategy, or other times it's just simply the time that they know that you're taking the space to sit down and be relaxed, and therefore, that's a space for you. But kids are pretty clever at times, and so they may well know that, mum or dad want to really focus on this, so I can get away with just being a little bit flippant about what I want to raise with them. So, I think it's really just, if it's a really important conversation, then, as much as you might love that 9 o'clock time, it might be time to be deliberate and say, right, we're here, and let's, what can we work through together? And I think, and conversations don't have to be in that deliberate nature. I mean, when we do work with parents, and hashtag chat starter is something that the National Mental Health Commission is working on, and we're part of that, is almost those opportunities. If you're driving in the car, kids often share with us that that's a great space, and I know in today's environment where a lot of people are in these lockdown conditions, baking and cooking together has become a space where families can have those conversations. It's not quite as confrontational or as challenging as sitting down face to face and really being in that very serious mindset. It can make a child be a little bit more relaxed to be doing activities with them.
Yeah, I love hashtag chat starter, because it's all about, the incidental conversations that can sometimes you're like, your little spidey senses are going, oh my God, this is a really serious disclosure I'm getting right now. I need to listen. And it can just be slotted into the most casual thing. Our children are so good at that. Tracy, you gave us some fantastic signals to look out for from our children when we know that to identify that they might be struggling. What are some strategies if we identify that our child isn't coping? Do we help them understand that they can call Kids Helpline? Do we call Kids Helpline with them and have a conversation together with them? What are some actual practical steps we can take once we've identified that we're worried for our kids?
Yeah, I think there are fantastic resources out there. And one of the things as part of the hashtag Chat Starter campaign is to make those resources available. And not just Kids Helplines, Beyond Blues, Headspace, all of these organisations have made some great resources. So they've all been put together on the Head to Health website to make it as easy as possible. And it's a great opportunity if you are looking to have, some of those difficult conversations around mental health. And even unfortunately, if a child might disclose they've had thoughts of suicide, to sit down together and work through those resources or locate them. Of course, Kids Helpline is here 24/7 for children, and parents are the major referral pathway for children, and we are very privileged that parents have that level of trust, because all of our counsellors are professional and they can really play an important support role. Parents at times with children who are consenting of it are involved in those conversations with counsellors, because it's part of an ongoing support structure that we want to have for our children, and parents are very much part of that. So take these opportunities, share these resources together, talk about them, put into place some things you might like to practice together, and be deliberate about those elements. I still think we're really encouraging people, as basic as it sounds, good sleep's important, getting exercise is important, being deliberate with family time is important. And even if you put yourself into the space and the child does not engage in that conversation initially, don't give up. It might take a number of times of creating the space for the child to do it. Don't just put it out there once. If you are truly worried, trust your instincts and keep just making the space available, because they'll take the space. It may not be at that first moment, it mightn't even be at the second, but it might be at the third.
And they're still they're still hearing you, they're still knowing that you're up.
That's right. They still know that you are there. And I think, as I said at the beginning, kids are picking up on what's happening for families. And I think that openness, that authentic way is really important as well, because unfortunately what's not being said at times can also be the things that children really keep inside, and it does create this impact on their well-being. So but at the moment, we are really trying to convey some really important messages that help seeking is positive, acknowledging the courage and the resiliency of our children and young people, not seeing these increases in demands as being all negative. In fact, it's a great indication of how capable our children are, and understand that we have all a role to play, Kids Helpline and others in our ecosystem, to support families and recognise that, I know that it's used a lot, the term we're in this together. Well, we do have to be in this together, and I think as parents, they need support, and to not feel that they have to be everything all the time to every single person, because self-care is so important if for children to get good care.
Can I ask a really quick resourcing question? Because I have a personal connection to a really good friend of mine whose son has been struggling with mental health issues, and frankly, she's done all the right things. He's got the numbers, he knows who to call if she's at work, all the rest of it. And this is by no means a criticism, it's a question of resourcing. He called Kids Helpline and was on hold for, I think, nearly 50 minutes and gave up. And I'm wondering, that means, I'm assuming that you haven't got enough money to meet the demand that you're currently experiencing.
Look, I think, and firstly, I do want to acknowledge that there are wait times at times for young people. It depends on the time of day. It depends on what's going on. It's an unfortunate reality that we can map demand for Kids Helpline around lockdowns now. So, in some of the earlier months of the year, if we look at February, when perhaps we were living in a world where we thought we were going to come through the pandemic a little bit more easily, we were averaging 32,000 contacts in that month. Now we're up to 43,000. So, we increased our counsellor numbers by 100, but you're quite right. At times the wait time can be that long. We are working hard to continue to raise and generate our income, and we put that income straight into more resources. More counsellors started yesterday. We're recruiting again now. We try and convey to young people that sometimes there is a wait, and that means our counsellors are working with other young people just like them and please don't give up. I know being on hold is hard. Please don't give up, because we are 24/7 and we will get to you. And I know that, we have multiple channels for young people. So I do want to acknowledge, I know that when you are in that moment, 50 minutes, an hour, it's a long time. And we do need, and we are constantly looking at how we can increase our resources.
And please be assured that that's not a criticism from me
no.
or from his. It's just an acknowledgement of kind of, well, what do you say to that kid then? You know, do we hold on? Do we try another line? Do we call back in an hour? Do we, you know, what's the advice? Because I was just so proud of him that he called.
It's fantastic. And
proud of him.
my initial advice is please stay on hold. Please don't give up on that. The counsellors will get to you, and they can be there for you. And then when young people, one of the things with Kids Helpline is because we have a professional staff, young people can connect back to the same counsellor. So they can actually establish that relationship that's built on trust and knowledge. And then once you've had that one connection, if it's really worked, then they can ask for that counsellor and they can find out when that counsellor might be on. So, you know, these are all things that the service does offer. But it is an unfortunate reality that resources are we've struggled in that space. It's not a criticism. I certainly don't see it as a criticism. It's just a reality, and we're doing what we can to keep our profile up there so that we're in the hearts and minds of decision makers around funding, and working with state government, federal governments, and corporates to help us in this space of meeting the demand.
And
so we'll be writing to our local PMs, our local MPs, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying that, Nellie. I think that as parents, that's also one of our roles, is to constantly advocate for organisations like Kids Helpline and demand better resourcing from our governments. That's one of the roles we have to do. So many as parents. I really love this notion of celebrating help seeking. It's such an important thing, and I don't think that's been spoken about enough. So you're right. Our kids are courageous. They are resilient. And with our help, I think the help seeking is such a wonderful thing to really encourage. And also you've reminded me, I think, Tracy, about role modelling, acknowledging our feelings with our kids. I mean, we have to teach them the language to talk about their feelings by talking about our own feelings. Yeah,
we don't want them to pretend.
No.
That great. That be authentic, be real, and and kids see that. They have wonderful detectors about when things aren't real, and I think that's right. And I think that as a society, if we can all replicate the resiliency and courage of our kids, then we are going to go forward really strongly. And I do sometimes get challenged by when I hear statements like, what's wrong with kids today? It actually makes me angry because I see so much in our young people that needs to be celebrated. And why shouldn't kids get help when they're being in situations where it's not safe? That is strength. That's not what's wrong with our kids today. So,
can I provide? It's so beautiful. Can I provide a little bit of hope? And again, I'm trying to manage privacy here, but one of my kids has a long-term illness and missed about 18 months of school. It took, and she's bright, but she's not like a Mensa scholar. It took about a couple of months for her to bounce back. I think when we hear about how much time kids have missed from school and social and so on, like, it is remarkable how resilient they are. They will catch up. They'll catch up at different rates, but they will catch up. I really believe that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things at the moment that we worry about is that they feel that they may not, and we have to keep allowing them to know that they will and they can be those spaces, because unfortunately exams are still happening. We're moving into exam time. Those stresses are there every year. This year they're just amplified because there's a lot of people take on a lot of pressure, whether it's real or not, and we just have to find our way to help them through that.
That's right. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us. We really are grateful to Kids Helpline for the incredible work that you do. I wish there was so much more money out there for you, but that's up to us to pressure our governments for that. In the meantime, we want to say thank you to all of the people on the phones, because it's critical work that they're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for the great interest. And I will certainly pass on the key messages. The team here are wonderful. I celebrate them all the time. We're very fortunate, but I always love to share with them the feedback, because it's pretty tough at times, and it's nice to have that level of value that people really do see in their work.
Yes.
They're saving lives. I mean, people say that all the time, but they actually are.
Yeah, that's right.
I couldn't respect them more.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tracy. You have a great day. I really appreciate you giving your time to Broad Radio today.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Tracy.
much.
Thanks, Tracy. Well, that's it, Nellie. We've gone 9 minutes over.
What a show, though.
Oh my
I
God.
came into this show feeling like shit. And now I feel great.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. That's all I wanted.
This is what you've created, girl. This is what you have created. I
Well-
feel like I can face this day now, honestly.
Well, honestly, if no one was listening, even though I know people were, and thank you to everybody who's been commenting and listening, but even if no one was, and it was just literally you and me with some very special friends that we'd organised as some kind of, like, we'd set up sort of like a radio, sort of faux radio show, as a ruse to get conversations with three incredible women. Even if that was the case, and it made you feel better, then that's my day done. I'm very happy.
Thank you so much. And I hope that that's the case for the listeners as well, because I still have hope. I really do still have hope in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
We will come out of it. We will.
Oh, 100% will come out of it. And you and I will get together and have a glorious afternoon of gin and tonics and be messy and mad.
I will hug the shit out of you.
I can't wait.
Double vaxxed.
Double vaxxed, you bet. You have a fantastic day. I love you, darling, and I hope that you keep your chin up. We'll get there.
I'm good. I'm all good. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.